So for the discovery model, I think it's a very common and intuitive idea that a lot of people have at its most general, which is namely that somehow I have a true or given self that I need to express, that I may fail to express it and fail to thrive or flourish because of that, that reasons that I might fail to express it are because other people have expectations of me. I think I'm supposed to be a doctor, but I really want to be a philosopher, and so I don't do what I truly want to do and what would express my true nature. But for the purposes of this talk and for the purposes of the theory, I used an example of a particular example of this sort of view, which is found in Ralph Waldo Emerson, because Emerson has this very strong and nicely developed view, and basically what he says is that each of us has an inner given self, a unique voice to give to the world, a unique set of talents, and he calls it genius, to express in living our lives. But that it can be difficult to do this, and the reason that it can be difficult to do this is that we don't fully understand it ourselves, right? We don't yet know entirely who we are. That's something we have to discover. And so we have these intuitions, we have things that draw us, we have ways we feel, things that seem right and true to us, but we don't completely understand why we're drawn to them, or what's so good about them, or how they all fit together. It can look very incoherent, and I used to feel one way and now I feel another way, and I don't know what changed. And so what Emerson says is we can be, because society gives us all kinds of sort of paradigms for how a life should go and what we should be doing, and other people have thoughts and expectations. And because we want to understand ourselves and we want to know what we're doing, it can be very difficult to listen to this inner voice or listen to the intuition that says, this is where you want to go, this is what you want to do with your life, this is what you believe. So we worry about it and we don't listen, and when we do that, we fail to thrive. And what we need to do is just stop trying to impose our will on our life. So it's almost the exact opposite of the Constitution view. We shouldn't step back and evaluate our deep desires and say, well, this one is okay and that one isn't, and this one doesn't fit with that one, so we have to do it and build a self in that way. Rather, we should respect the fact that these deep desires are coming from someplace within us that's true. We should trust that, and we should follow it, whether we understand it or not. Now, the shortcomings here, first of all, Emerson reassures us that because we all have a true deep self that maybe we don't completely understand, if we do this, some sort of very deep unity and meaning will emerge from what we do. We may not see it, we may not understand it. He uses this very nice sailing metaphor, right? The sailboat is tacking, so it looks like it's a zigzag line and it's not going in a straight line. But from a distance, what you see is a straight line, or a graph with points all over. You don't yet see it, but then when you draw it, you see it really approximates a line, and he tells us our lives will do this. So to get this reassurance, you have to believe Emerson, that you have this true, deep, given self and a genius that will express itself. That's a pretty big commitment. A lot of people would not accept that. They, say, well, we don't have something like that. So if our lives are going to go smoothly, we need to take some initiative to make sure that they do. We can't just trust whatever drives and impulses we feel. So that's one problem with it. And the other is, it's not exactly a problem, but a thing that I mentioned in the talk is I think we have to acknowledge, even if we did have such a drive or genius, sometimes just to get through a life, you need to intervene. Sometimes things have gotten so chaotic that you're not going to be able to continue unless you step back and say, and think about where things are going. And in some sense, Emerson does this in his essays. He's telling us how to live. He's thinking about how to live a life, so there's a certain reflective element. But I also think, and I should mention this here, that the reflection view has to allow, and I sort of implied this when I said we can't really think about every decision, that sometimes we just have to let go and let things happen. So I think that each of these views has to make room for some bit of the other, right? The self-discovery view has to say, well, there has to be some points at which you intervene. And the Constitution view has to say, well, we can't really decide every single thing about who we are. Sometimes we just have to let things happen. But neither explains how to make room for the other. So in some sense, I think what's needed is a way of thinking about what it looks like to have a view that makes some room for both of these things and to see them maybe as ends of a spectrum.